Welcome to the Adaptive Human
Project podcast
with John Salisbury and David Whalen.
Greetings, humans. Greetings, humans. So, first topic for today, we're starting a new podcast with David Whalen and myself. My name is John Salisbury. I'm the CEO of Nexogen. I'm a subpar athlete that tries hard, and I'm a technology nerd and AI goofball, and ultimately a serial entrepreneur. I'm here with David Whalen, my partner in crime. And David, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, my name is David Whalen. I am a Cincinnati-based endurance athlete. I race with Team USA's paired triathlon team. I race an Ironman 70.3 triathlons. I do some other cool triathlons. Just got back from doing my first trail run. So yeah, everything endurance related is definitely my jam. I'm a below knee amputee. I've been an amputee since 2018. I was injured in a work-related accident. I'm sure that we'll dive into all of those details. But yeah, John and I had met on a bike ride, and we just vibed really good on the love of bikes and just, everything it is to be a great person and just, kind of want to really help our community with a great mindset. So I think that's kind of the basis of what we're going on with this podcast, is just wanting to help people and sharing our mindset and perspective on a lot of different topics.
So I think it's about adaptability. How do humans be adaptable and overcome adversity? So or how do we grow? I think that, and then all of that, like, how do you do that in a way that's positive and good, like you're saying, right? And that's sort of how I think of it. So what are we naming this thing? Is this called the Infinite Project or what, David?
I like the Infinite Project. I like the Infinite Human Project, human adaptability. I mean, we got to see if any of these are already taken as channels. But
let's call it the Talking Monkey Projects. Talking monkeys, and then we'll just do something very similar to Joe Rogan, and we'll invite on crazy guests, and it'll just get real popular, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. We'll see where we land. That sounds rad. But yeah, no, I agree, man. I think that, one of the ultimate things is as humans is what makes us adaptable, right? Like our ability to be able to adapt to situations, good or bad. And I think, being able to have that ability and maximizing that ability is incredibly important, right? But like, how do we get good at, being good at adapting to situations? And I don't think that necessarily comes from constantly being in a state of comfort, but rather in a state of discomfort or challenging ourselves in situations, mentally or physically, right? Like that's how we ultimately grow, I think.
Yeah, I totally agree. So walk me through what you mean by discomfort.
Yeah. So when I don't mean like, poke your finger and get used to poking your finger, right? But like, I think getting good at stressors, one of the things that you and I like, John, is riding bikes, right? So, if you want to get to be a stronger cyclist, they say ride hills, right? So like, if you're wanting to become a stronger cyclist, riding hills, everybody knows that hills are more challenging for you. So increasing that adaptation to hills and it is ultimately going to make you a stronger cyclist. And I think that, being able to say that for anything, right? Like increasing, the adaptation to something just by constantly challenging yourself in whatever it is that you're doing is ultimately what's going to make you better, right? So it's kind of getting comfortable with being uncomfortable. It's where you're going to find that those adaptational changes.
I love that. I think I kind of look at it from like a pattern formation, which becomes what we call comfortable. So like we use these words or sounds that we kind of pulled out like talking monkeys. I do think that to a degree. And then those like formalize. So I wake up every morning and I brush my teeth, which is an established good habit, based on our teeth not falling out, and our parents tell us it's generational. But if I want to change that habit to be even better, So I'm not going to do it right when I wake up, and I'm going to wait 15 minutes afterwards. I'm going to add like mouthwash. I'm going to add dental flossing. I'm going to add, let's say, 3 other new techniques that just came out. When I make the adjustment from the old pattern to a new one, that actually becomes the adaptation. And then to make that adjustment, no matter how small it is, normally is tough. And it actually, we don't want to do it. And when we don't want to do something, that immediately equates back to a feeling. So we say the thought of what the experience is, but the experience comes from a feeling. And the feeling of uncomfortability is us adjusting to a new or optimized or improved pattern set. Sometimes it could be to like a negative pattern set, like we're doing it worse. And we can fall into that, and normally the good one, or the one that we deem by like universally as being like the best one, it's usually challenging. And people from the outside will say, that looks like you're really disciplined. And you're like, no, that's my new pattern. And I'm choosing these patterns because they're deemed healthy and they make me feel better. Ultimately, like I'm doing good. Right. I look at it that way. And then even those that I get into that are good, I need to challenge myself on those, because I can get stuck onto those. So it's like, it's sort of like an infinite process that we call life. I think that's why it's a great name.
Yeah. And, to piggyback on that a little bit, I feel, that also means that who we are is incredibly fluid, right? Like what makes us like what it is that we like is just patterns that we constantly do over time, right? But we could change those patterns, we could change those habits, but we just need to introduce the stimulus, right? Like it's like going to the gym for the first time. Everybody doesn't like it. The first week is often going to suck. You're probably going to be sore, but after a period of time, you change the habit, you increase the stimulus, your body gets used to it. And, you develop a habit over time. And once you start seeing some of those changes, whether it be physically or mentally, that's when you start kind of, probably enjoying the process a little bit more. But I think it's just introducing that and understanding that, it really is a choice. If you want to change something or add something, and create a new habit.
Yeah, it's not like people talk about us being like non-determined systems and stuff like that, and that there's not a choice, like free will and stuff. I know that's like philosophical. I'd jump right to it. But yeah, I agree with you. There is a choice. Like you're aware of the circumstances, and that awareness, you can sort of like direct your actions. I totally agree. And the ability to adapt is almost like the ability to learn. So like you can, what is it they say, when people learn how to learn, that's all they need to do. Once you do that, you're good. And learning how to learn means you're almost learning how to adapt, because you've learned how to self-improve at that point, or to adjust or guide or take control of the choice. Almost like a waking up of some sort. But I feel like you can fall asleep too. So you can like be totally self-aware and totally cranking and like making all the good decisions, and then just fall into like autopilot. And then once you're in autopilot, your adaptability kind of falls away and you almost fall asleep. And it's like, okay, I need the reminder. I need the wake up call. I need to get going. So what recently have you done or not done, which has changed your adaptability? Because you're missing a leg or part of your leg underneath one of your knees. So, and you're doing all sorts of crazy shit, David. So like quickly, we didn't go over this like fully. You're like Iron Man. So you have like all these crazy, like when I'm like, hey, I want to go out for a 70-mile bike ride. You're like, hey, I want to run around the state of Ohio. I'm missing. So it's a little different. Like why is that? Why is that you? Why does that, tell me what that makes you check there.
Yeah, I mean, I think that kind of goes back to my injury a little bit. I was injured in a work accident, and I had my foot crushed by a piece of equipment, and then from there diagnosed with a horrible nerve condition. And whenever I am able to do a lot of these challenging races or have these experiences, I'm able to kind of revisit and rechannel that pain and use that pain to help push me forward. So I use all of those adaptations that I was able to develop throughout my journey, especially like the mental, the mental tools and techniques that I was fortunate to be able to learn to really help push me forward. Right. So like whenever I do these these races, like that race in Norway, the Norseman race, or any of them, I'm able to almost revisit, those hard times and just
Hmm.
use them as fuel rather than something. And ultimately, it's really me showing myself how strong I am and being able to, really, really make these techniques, um, real for me, I guess. Like I talk about them quite a bit, but it's another thing to talk about something and it's another thing to actually do it. Right. So like when I do it, it shows me that, I'm not I guess an imposter with it. Like it is definitely something that I practice and it's something that I believe actually truly works. And I think that, you know, um, that ultimately it's our mindset that is the determining factor on if we're going to be successful in something. Like, sure that there's, physical abilities that you're going to need to have that are practiced over, time. But I feel like more often than not, it's the mental barrier and a lot of this that people have a hard time overcoming. But yeah,
Real quick there. So you said prove it to yourself. It's
yeah,
like I always find this like game like we have to prove it to ourselves. Or why don't we just say, hey, it's there. That's how it is, and it just is. And we're constantly reinforcing or coming up with this new flags that we're planting and saying, hey, look at the flag to ourselves. And that just reestablishes the strength in our personality. So did you feel at some point that you had a brokenness or something that you're now trying to overcome? Do you feel, and then the other interesting part to me is also you want to go back and revisit the part when you felt that maybe that way. So
yeah.
one is, one, you're proving it to yourself. So you might have had some brokenness that you felt, and that's sort of imaginatory, right? And not necessarily real. Then secondly, you want to plant flags and then we just keep going in this direction. So explain all that process to me.
Yeah, I do feel like I had my moment of rock bottom where I was broken, literally, physically, mentally, spiritually, all of that. I'm going throughout my journey. Like I said, I had the worst chronic pain condition known to medical science. For about 7.5 years, it felt like I was being lit on fire and stabbed repeatedly. Um, I had multiple surgeries trying to fix my foot. And after each surgery, the nerve condition that I had, that burning and stabbing sensation, it spread more and more throughout the left side of my body. Um, in
What
20,
real quick there, when you say flesh on fire, do you actively go to that experience of trying to recreate what that felt like today? Or do you remember it that it was there? It's sort of a fuel sense, or do you actually go back to that actual experience? Do you remember like exactly what it was and then use that as fuel?
Absolutely. Yeah. I don't go to the point to where like I push myself physically to feel that sort of pain, but I do push myself mentally to go back to remember what that pain felt like. But like even more than that, I go back to like that sensation that I had and that mental awareness that I had of how broken I was and, how I felt like, hope was just so far away, right? Like, I had all these goals and dreams that I wanted to do. And I felt like if I was to say them out loud, they were so delicate to where, they would just blow away in the wind, right? But I had all of these dreams, such as my Ironman races and, that Norway race that I just did and all of that. And I go back to that feeling and, I've watched all these races for years that like I have, on my trainer and on my treadmill, I have literally cried while I was on the bike, living in that moment of being at the finish line. So like I go to that moment mentally of where I was so broken and I almost flip that switch and just say, not again, fuel,
Hmm.
go. Right.
I almost so I had some struggle too, and I got into a major pain situation as well. I find it interesting. Is it? I almost feel like I'm dancing with the devil a little bit because it's like the lowest low of the low I got. You can't move past it until you analyze it. So I use this analogy when you have this like real painful or like deep darkness or like really horrible experience. You have to look at it in the eye. So you have to really get a lot of clarity around it. You got to shine a light on it. And
Def-
I would say in Buddhism, they say like, take your awareness and bring it fully to that. And as you do that, it becomes extremely clear. And most people they're almost afraid to even do that because they're so used to running away from those experiences. So once you get clarity and you can actually look at it, then at that point, like a gentle scientist, in my mind, you go back and you sort of start brushing it like an archaeologist, like brushing off the dust and like really getting even more clarity. And you just keep brushing, you keep looking at it, you keep looking at it more carefully. And eventually it just disappears and you can't even find it.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh wow, this pain. And then you're like, okay, I want to fight it now because it's actually my fuel. So it's like,
Yeah.
okay, I want to go further and reactivate it. So we find clever ways to motivate ourselves. And it's all a game that sort of we're playing, but it's a healthy one in my mind. It is a little bit like dancing with the devil a little bit because you're trying to reactivate it a little bit like, hey, I know, I remember you. I want to use you again to get the next mile.
Yeah, yeah. This level of self-awareness, I believe, is for everybody, and it's obtainable for everybody. It is. I feel like it's often brought on by some sort of trauma, whether it be physical or mental. Like this level of self-awareness, yeah, it does have to be sought out. After, right? Like it is something that and correct me if I'm wrong. I don't know how you feel about that, but I do think that you have to be in pursuit of not being in the mentality anymore, but like almost I'm so freaking sick and tired of being so freaking sick and tired. And I can't do this anymore. And what is the opposite? That's what I need to do. And for a lot of people, I feel like, the victim mentality is so comfortable because there's no work that's involved. Like you could just sit there, you could just stay there. You don't have to do any work, but like you do the opposite, right? And you get out of the victim mentality. Well, now what does that look like? It's a lot of self-discovery. It is a lot of meditation. It's a lot of going inward. It's a lot of changing, the routine in your day to day. It's probably a lot of detaching from a lot of the people that probably harbor, or influenced or, have that same victim mentality that it's okay. I can't associate with this community anymore. I have to detach and I have to find a different community. And that transitional period is also incredibly uncomfortable because typically it's a solo journey. Right. So when you
Well,
start,
isn't it always, sorry, I want to pause it. It's always a solo journey.
it's always a
Even
solo journey.
Yeah, but the people around you, it's like garbage in, garbage out. So like you definitely surround yourself with I hate to say garbage. It's just people that are lost as well. And then you're kind of falling into lostness, right? So I love that you're that solo piece. So it really is. It's like at the end of the day, I can't blame anyone. It's just me 1v1.
Yeah. Yeah. I got to give grace to everybody's journey, right? Like everybody, when I went through my journey of trauma, I was injured at the age of 24. And the circles that I was in, we lived for the weekends where, who wants to split a 30 pack and, who wants to smoke some weed or do this, that, and the other. Let's go to the bar and, go be some knuckleheads and do all that. When I was injured, the party stopped for me and so did the phone call stopped. And initially I got really, really mad and I got really hurt about it. And, I harbored a lot of frustration with it. But after taking time and like detaching from that, I understood that I got to give grace to everybody else's journey and where they're at and where they're not. We're all going to be at this point, in some way, right? Like whether, you have a loved one that passes away, or, typically, like I said, it's from some sort of trauma that's going to happen. And, it's the level of self-awareness and going inward that I think, um, you know, is what it takes to really be successful at managing those really, really hard times. And to your point, John, that kind of reminds me of like the story of the buffalo too, right? Like, do you know the story of the buffalo, the difference between a buffalo and a cow?
Enlighten me. I may have heard it. Who knows?
Yeah, it's beautiful. And, to your point, Joe Rogan, he talks about the difference between an American buffalo and a cow. There will be a storm that's coming on a plane and then the cows run away from the storm and they end up suffering much, much more and longer trying to outrun the storm and getting exhausted by outrunning it. And, some of them end up dying. But he's like the buffalo though. He's like, this is the big difference between a cow and a buffalo. He's like, the buffaloes go into the storm and understand that the quicker you go into the storm, is the quicker you're going to get through the storm. And if you just keep pushing through and holding your ground and pushing through, you're going to get through that storm and suffering so much quicker. Yeah, it's a solo journey.
That's true. But you had this like steep curve. So like, I think that's what so a lot of people like, it's like death by 1 trillion cuts, right? Or 10,000 cuts, right? Yours was like you were going along smooth and then just like traumatic work injury. So like immediate change in trajectory of life. A lot of people are like, or I would say like this, right? You had this like, you were like negative trajectory when you had the big work accident. Major impact, major change, like full stop. A lot of people, it's just like gradual, slowly, extra 3 drinks a night, not getting this done, thinking about negative thoughts, getting toxicity, putting garbage in, ignoring things, developing guilt because you're not doing these things. It's like small little. Yours was kind of, so that's it. The reason I think people are so impressed is because it was such a dramatic drop off, and that actually, and then from there, an extended period state. So then from there, a big climb back out. The climb back out probably looks like this, but it's probably much more like a slant, I'm assuming, right? But
Right.
is that sort of right? Yeah. Then I think that people are drawn to that cliff on the front end, because it's there. You don't have any control over it. You're completely. It's like you're a complete victim. There's no. You didn't like do it to yourself. Like literally a multi-ton thing like hit your leg. So I think there's no judgment. It's just instant acceptance, and that's where you have the opportunity to be such an inspiration. And that's probably annoying to you. You're like, no, I want to help people and all that, but the inspiration side, you're probably like, quit tagging me with that, right? But it like it's almost like a badge of honor, right? Just like take it and put the Iron Man suit on, right? Am I describing that kind of right?
Yeah. If I could help people, whatever label, obviously it's hard for me to put, the inspiration factor on me kind of thing, but like, if my story helps other people, then, that's how I become worthy of my suffering. Right. And all I ultimately want to do is, be able to use what I learned to help other people. Fortunately, I get to have some fun, in the process as well. But yeah, ultimately, like my true passion is wanting to share my journey and, help other people. So like, whether that be, motivational or inspirational or however it is, label it what you will kind of thing. Like, fantastic. I'm how can I help?
Yeah. Yes to this too. Yes to this too, please. Thank you.
Absolutely.
But you can see, I can watch the people resonate. I have my own personal experience of hearing your story. So we met on a bike ride, a guy named James down out of Cincinnati. He's or Northern Kentucky. He's a friend of both of ours. So I own a small business. It's a company called Nexogen. And then I have some other small businesses, which are like one called Pay Options, one called Enterprise Technology Association, one called RoveIQ, and a couple others. So a little bit entrepreneurial. Now I'm working with Jay Downs, who also had some struggles. He went through kind of that 40-year-oldish. Jay and I were both much more like the slow process to like pain and suffering. I feel like not that steep, but we've been kind of like working out together and like getting back in shape. And Jay's a DJ. He's just a really cool guy. And we showed up on Saturday mornings at this bike shop in Northern Kentucky, and it seems like around 35, 40-year-old guys will come and they're like, I want to get back in shape. And we go out on 30, 40, 50-mile bike rides all around Cincinnati on roads together. And it's like a little adventure. It's like a kid, like you met with your kids and your friends when you were young, and you went in the neighborhood and like, hey, let's go see what's in that neighborhood. 3 neighborhoods over. And you take off on a journey and you explore and you see, and then you come back. And while you're doing that, you're working on the road, you're communicating as a team, and then you're telling stories. And you told me your story and I was listening, and I remember I was like crying, like I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. That like, and crying is not like something I just walk around and do 24/7. It's just that impactful. So it helped me, that thing where I need to go back and see my pain a little bit. You helped me do that, if that makes sense. You helped me go back to that experience, see it, and then realize you overcame it. That was similar to me. And then at that point, I felt connected to you. So there was a connection point that just happened. It was like just natural. And then immediately I was like, how do I get him to help more people see that same thing? So it was like, I was like, gosh, so like, what is it? 2 weeks later, you're speaking at a conference you're holding. And I was like, and everybody in the room was just, it was breathtaking. That was called Cincy AI Week. So you're kind of on this journey for those types of activities. So we're kind of like, hey, let's just start a podcast and start talking about these fun humans overcoming challenges and us kind of doing some fun adventures, like, because we're going to be going this next weekend. We're going to ride our bikes from Cleveland, Ohio to Cincinnati. It's 300 and plus miles. That's an adventure we're going to do, right? So let's talk about it, and let's bring people into that experience. So maybe we talk about that journey coming up of the Cleveland one. So that's a big trip, like 300 miles plus on a bike.
Yeah.
It's not like walking down the street. So what are you worried about there? What are challenges? Are you worried about that? Why do you want to do it? Are you breaking any records? What's going on here?
Yeah, I think it's about 326 miles as we're talking about doing it in 3 days, probably about maybe around 8-10 hours of riding a day with breaks and, lunch and all that good stuff. But yeah, like I said, for me, this is just, it's the opportunity to push myself, to challenge myself. I'm originally from Southern California, from the Los Angeles area. And that's the land of milk and honey for an adaptive athlete. Like if you are a para athlete, there is everything there that you could possibly want to do. And it's beautiful and it's fantastic. But I moved to Cincinnati about 4 years ago. And trying to bring a lot of those same things here, a lot of the different resources and, trying to help spread awareness for a lot of the different recreations and sports. I feel like we're communal beings, right? We thrive in a sense of community. I have a great time riding with you, John. You're absolutely rad. Jay's rad. I love riding with anybody as much as I can, but ultimately, like, I do want to ride with people that have the same challenges as I do, right? Like whether it be missing a limb or, anything like that, having some sort of disability and helping my community grow in that sense, the disabled community. So I get to use a lot of my experiences and challenges to honestly show what's possible and show what we can do just because we have, these disabilities or whatever, speaking to the beginning of this show and what we were talking about, it really is about human adaptation, right? And how can we adapt and how can we thrive with those adaptations, right? So,
yeah. Well, for instance, we're going up to Cleveland and starting there, and then riding back down. But like, we could have challenges. There's no cell signal for 20 miles in some of these places. You're out in farmland, like old railroad tracks.
right.
Do you have any fears or worries? Like, what if I go down with a heart condition? Like, we're kind of together, right? What's the some of these things, that any of that go through your mind, or you just kind of like, yeah, let's just kill it, no problem.
Let's just go. Yeah, no, I'm all about going. Like, I'm more scared of not going than I am of going, right? Like, for me, the juice is worth the squeeze, right? Like, there's an inherent risk in anything that you do, but I travel quite a bit. If I go down on a plane or something, hey, I went going somewhere that I was, going to want to go and doing something that I love doing and doing all this, that, and the other, right? Like, I get to do this. Like, it would be a shame and an absolute pity to die on my couch from a heart attack or die in a car accident, going to the DMV, trying to renew registration. Like, that's tragic in my opinion. Like, to me, there's like a romanticism around like, shit, he died doing something that he really loved to do. Right. Like,
cool. But this would be, but you would be doing this in record pace, I believe, correct? You would be,
I hope so.
If we do it in 3 days, right? Isn't that the case? Let me look it up real quick here.
Yeah. I know that there was another, amputee, I believe he had like clubfoot or something like that that recently did it in about 7 days. There's a list that you can go on for Ohio to Erie Trail of the people that have done it throughout the past years. Um, I mean, there's not a whole lot of us, that are missing limbs that are doing that trail that I know of. I'm right now, the only para triathlete racing in the state actively. Um, so yeah, I would be, uh, surprised if there's been more than one or a
Yeah,
couple.
I'm not seeing a whole lot of it. I just use Perplexity AI. It's like a Google alternative, much better, by the way. I did not seeing somebody else, but I think it'd possibly be a record. Now, there's another gentleman who may be coming with us who has a full heart transplant. So he is also interested. He's doing a presentation for his wife to see if she will allow him, because they have kids and they're both working, so it could be a logistical challenge. But he might be the first heart transplant to do it. So okay, I'm involved in this too, which is
No pressure.
my yeah, my thing is more on the I mean, you guys have both overcome crazy amounts. I went through depression, so pretty significant depression. So that was my sort of overcoming momentum. And I mean, as a kid, I'd never. My family sort of has a history of it. They talked about it and stuff. I never experienced it, and then I did, and I didn't know I was, and then it got worse, and then I got to some pretty unhealthy states. And I've worked myself out of it in a slow way. But to me, this is another flag post getting put in the ground. Ultimately, the one I want to get to after this would be across the country, would be San Diego to St. Augustine
Heck yeah.
on a bike. And that's the one I'm interested. And then maybe someday across Europe, who knows, like, or something and then China, around the whole globe. Like, heck yeah, like that sounds fun to me. At some point, also extremely dangerous, but extremely fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I'd love to go into your story a little bit. Again, I feel like all of this is brought on by some sort of traumatic event, right? And you obviously don't have to share more than you want to share, but
Oh no.
I think that, showing everybody that, it doesn't necessarily have to be a physical trauma that you went through like myself, but like trauma comes in all different forms and mechanisms of injury. Do you mind kind of sharing what it was that you went through and your experience with it and how you saw your way through it and what you do regularly to like kind of help keep that at bay?
Wow. So yeah, it's I would say, I mean, I've talked about it on podcasts before, but it's extremely, my wife is also, she's a mental health counselor, has her own practice. So we know a lot about the space. I, I would akin my problem more to like an addiction, problem, and then also, circumstantial problems. So it was more, um, Buddhists will call it ego, um, and sort of like forgetting what you are and who you are, and then getting on the meds. Mine started off with pain, so I was having chest pains at 27 years old, 28 years old, due to stress. I was working really hard. I own businesses, and I thought that 18 hours a day was what you did, and I didn't really have a way to release the stress, even though I was exercising. I was playing volleyball and stuff, which ultimately was I'll kind of come to later. But I was playing volleyball with some friends, and I had some pretty significant chest pain due to anxiety. I believe now, and I never had experienced that in my life. So I was 28, 27, 28, and this incredible, intense sort of pressure hit my chest, and that to the point where then I went to the hospital for it, thinking I was having a heart attack. And doctor's like, "Hey, you don't have a 300-pound person jumping on your chest," which is what it felt like. I honestly, to this day, don't know if I'll ever be able to determine if I'm actually having a heart attack. That's how significant, like, it felt real.
Right.
So I was on the doctor's desk and or on the chair, and he's basically like, "You're totally fine." He's stethoscoping me and all this stuff. He's like, "You're totally fine." I'm like, "Well, what the heck's this pain?" And he's like, well, you're just having a panic attack. And I was like, okay, that's a panic attack. Like that's in my head. And he's like, yeah. And I'm like, well, how in the hell is that in my head? So obviously I didn't know much about body mind connection and I didn't have anybody around to teach me. And information wasn't as prevalent. So I did what the doctor said. I started taking Xanax and I started taking anxiety medication. And that began a long journey all the way to 40 years old. So 14 years old, 14-year journey of all the way progressing through more and more meds to fight off this pain, which I didn't believe was possible to fight off with on my own. And I just used more and more meds and alcohol and all of these other sort of like substances that were just unhealthy. Now, there was a window within that period where I turned into Triathlon John and really, really worked things out. Not fully, but sort of. I got into free diving, I got into breath holding, I got into some of these techniques that was really helpful. But I kind of fell off the wagon and went back into these negative behaviors. And it definitely sucks because to the point where I would say almost like suicidal, like that's how much I was running away from this dragon I built. But ultimately I figured out with me, it was like Buddhism, meditation, and sort of this other way of living that really just helped me master my mind and explore my mind, kind of like you're talking about, and really get into every crevice. Like if there's any little closet or any little door that's closed, gosh, go in there and just clean it out. So really understand your mind palace completely. So the practices I put in place, gosh, cold bath, sauna, exercise, meditations, explorations, the type of content I read, the type of explorations, guided meditations, on and on and on, to the point where there hasn't been any meds in my body in over 3.5, 4 years. So it's been, and life has been tremendously just fantastic. So I'd say fear was a big part of the anxiety piece. I'd label it there. That was for me. I had built this dragon with fear. But overcoming that now, I mean, now I'm trying to I'm still playing flags. It's still a few years after, but I'm still having fun, kind of taking on new challenges. And there was definitely a big rebuild. But as you're rebuilding, you sort of have to take everything down to its studs or even the foundation. And when you do, you kind of come out of that. And if you go through the proper like psychotherapy, mental health therapy and all that kind of stuff, as you're coming up, you're sort of creating a new personality structure that you're putting your flag behind. So people that knew you before as a different way, they actually don't realize you're different now. So you can kind of be judged by who you were and not who you are, which I'm sure happens with me all the time. So now I live more as I live in Northern Kentucky. And I'm a Buddhist Christian. I try to live like a Buddhist monk. That's my goal. I fail every second of every day, but that's my goal. And to me, that's like Ram Dass said it really well. It's you work on yourself so that you can be there for other people and help them. So that's sort of the base mentality. And you wake up every morning and how do I get rid of this ego and how do I be more helpful for other people? But that's sort of the story. Yep.
Yeah, I love that. So the last thing that you said is you do that every day, right? So like with that being said, it's a daily intentionality that you wake up with the understanding that this is my form of medicine and therapy that keeps quite literally the Western form of medicine out of your system, right? So
ridiculous. The Western, this will be an entire podcast, but yes, the Western way of thinking is what I was indoctrinated into and what I understood. And it completely eliminated, or I didn't even realize the other way of thinking, what it was, how it works, and what the benefits are. Is either one perfect? No. Are both have advantages to them? Yes. Are they both helpful? Yes. In mastering both of them, super beneficial. So yes, absolutely. The Western side, though, I would look at hospitals are a place where you go to when you need significant repair. They're real. You have real injuries, all these kind of things. But a lot of the things we do are to make a buck, it sure seems like, and to make it easy on us.
Absolutely. So with that being said, we're definitely not recommending that people not take medication. That's definitely not what we're saying at all. But I think
Yes.
that, don't be scared to go inward and do that work, because that is equally as much of, if not more, medicine and therapy, right? Like,
Yes, yes, yes. And I just was talking to you, I think, about the girl on Netflix special, who was who just did, I'll get the name of it, but it's, we don't have it, Jamie from Joe Rogan here.
I think it's Hold Your Breath, right? The girl that did the ice dive.
Yeah, she had she was like a professional mountain bike racer or something like that, and like her leg was like, you had her leg here, it was filleted down both sides, and multiple compound fractures, like with super significant injury. She then went to it was a Western style therapy where she was basically had surgeries after surgery after surgery and pain med after pain med after pain med, and then found a Wim Hof cold therapy where she would go into ice bath type things. Literally was suicidal, like multiple suicide attempts, extremely like horrible pain. She's now a professional ice diver.
Yeah.
Like literally, that's not like an overnight thing. So you don't just like stop meds and like, but it's sort, and you have to make a big jump and say, this is what I'm going to do. But it is possible. And I think that's what we're trying to say. There's possibilities out there. May not be for everybody, but there's possibilities. And there's these guiding light posts like yourself, like her, that have gone through those processes, and they kind of show you, hey, there's another way.
Yeah. And, I think another strong point as well is, how you're deciding to living your life right now as a Buddhist Christian. And, you are who you are, unapologetically, which is absolutely fantastic. But like, Jim Carrey talks a lot about how for him, depression is defined as, wearing this mask that everybody, needs you to be, right? Like from what I take away from what Jim Carrey says is that he created this character, Jim Carrey, and he just got so sick and tired of playing that character that everybody always accepted him to be, that became who he was when that wasn't in reality who he was, right? I think through like our adolescence, it is, we fall into these roles, with our group of friends to where like, for me, I was the idiot of the group that would just do all the dumb things. And, I would be the first one to get drunk and say and do something wildly outlandish. Right. And I don't know if you can believe that, John, but yeah, I did not care. I would just say and do whatever it was that I wanted. But like, that was the character that I had developed within my friend group. Right. So like, yeah, I'm often judged on the things that I used to do versus, who I am now and what it is that I'm trying to do, which, I'm definitely trying to reinvent myself. But yeah, it's, who we are as adolescents, it doesn't have to be who it is that we are moving forward, right? Like taking off that mask and, hey, this doesn't serve me. I dove into hypnotherapy really, really hard after my injury.
Wow.
And now I constantly ask myself a question because of that. Does this serve me? Right. And like, if it doesn't serve me, I don't have time for it, whether it be, the alcohol, whether it be, wasting time doing this, that, or the other. I don't have time for it. Like, sure, I'll fall every once in a while, I'll have a drink, I've had a few beers in the past few years kind of thing, but I understand what serves me and what doesn't serve me. And if it doesn't serve me, I don't have time for it. And, you don't have to be that person that everybody expects you to be if that's not who serves you. To me, it really is a choice, right?
Yeah, that's a great perspective. I would say I had a bit of that too. It's in the business world where I was at, we started I was entrepreneurial, so I'd started some businesses and I was seeing success. I swear there's people will throw awards at you left and right nonstop. It was award after award after award, stage after stage after stage. Um, saying how amazing things are. We're showing all this growth and so forth. But at night when I got home, I'm fighting some pain and stress and anxiety that was insurmountable. So I was not happy. Um, but I was told to be the person that's accepting the award and unstoppable, and no one can stop you. And all these people had like said, "Hey, we're hitching our wagon to you. Keep going." Right. So if you're struggling yourself, it's like you almost add some weight. Like they give you the award, it's not even a big deal, but at some point it adds weight. So shedding that, I call it shedding, like just shedding it, getting down to your core essence of who you are, what you want to be, and then finding people that want you, that flame of fire, like you. I don't want to get out of bed and say I want to run around Ohio or ride across Ohio all the time. You do, and being around people like you that have these types of things, or like Scott Phillips, for instance, he wakes up every morning and said, "How can I be more helpful to the world?" That's literally the first thing he taught himself. He taught me that. I was like, I want to be around that guy more because he's going to help me dive into that special secret super sauce that he's got. I want to be around that more. And I think before in the business world, when I was getting the awards, I was looking for people that could excel the business monetarily or strategically and so forth. Now I'm looking for just good humans. And I realized that if you get good humans, they're like magnets, and they just attract all these other good people. And you just need a lot of those together, and it sort of creates better positive energy. And from there, you naturally get good results. So it's sort of data, I think, supports all this. But in general, what I'm saying, we still make strategic decisions. But if I'm making a strategic decision and we have 50 people that apply for a position and we're going to hire, it's down to 2, I'm listening for the person that has the goodness in them, that rawness, that authenticity, the thing that's going to help everyone, encourage them, and create positivity. One of them might have a better degree, but he's a little bit negative and actually has an ego and is not challenging people and is not looking at how things ultimately for the team, that's not necessarily long-term success. So to me, all these values, it was sort of this question that was raised. I was doing all this Buddhist work, which I don't think people understand what that is, but it's, I was doing all this work and people were like, how do you incorporate Buddhism in the business? And I would go to people like, how do you incorporate Buddhism into your business? Like friends that are like spiritual in that way. And they were like, or Christians and so forth. And everybody's kind of has their own way to do it, but I wasn't afraid to ask them. And then I wasn't afraid to listen. And then I've kind of come up with my own formula, which has become my little recipe, which is sort of what I just described. It's not being afraid to have activity, not being afraid of the doors to walk through, and not being afraid to make the choice based on what's good over everything else. So that's sort of like where I've kind of landed on, and then trying to promote that. And then again, you're going to fail. I'm not.
Right. So, I love that you said that you are a Buddhist Christian, right? Like, what does that mean to you? You know, I feel like oftentimes, people will get stuck on, I'm a Christian, or I'm a Buddhist, or, I'm this or I'm that. Like, what does that mean to you? Like, how does that affect your practice? Is that a popular belief? What is, go into that a little more.
I want to live my life like Jesus did. And I would say Jesus would say something very similar. Or like Gandhi, he found a shared commonality of good in Muslim and in Hindu and Buddhism and Christian. And he became a voice for people, and connecting people. And he used peace as a way to make movements happen. And that to me is something very inspiring, much more inspiring than, let's say, like Mark Zuckerberg or a Bill Gates. I would not even put Bill Gates in the same breath as I would put Gandhi, from a like impact standpoint, or somebody like Jesus, right? It's a different impact. So to me, all faiths and all religious practices are guiding us towards God, to a degree, and they're all helping us self-improve. And a lot of them, I think, also line up with science. In my mind, there's a bridge there. And I think science is an exploration of the universe as well. So I think you can look at each one of those and divide very easily. But you can do the same thing and look at them and unify very easily. So Christianity is what I grew up in. That's where my dad was assistant pastor, and I studied Christianity, and I believe in Jesus and his teachings. And then Buddhism is where I went to get back to Jesus. So I went to Buddhism, which then helped me come back to really understand his message from a different perspective, which I felt like actually hit me harder. So Buddhism strengthened and deepened my Christian faith 10 times, 100 times.
Interesting.
And I've heard lots of people that have had that same journey, but it's a different. I would say a lot of Christians I speak to say I'm a little bit unique in that aspect, but my thinking. But I think for me it works, and when I feel the Holy Spirit or God, the feeling I get is telling me that I'm going down a direction that is okay. So I feel like I'm right with God, and if I feel really good there, then my confidence is extremely high.
That's beautiful. Yeah. For me, I'm not incredibly religious. I do believe in a higher power. For me, it is, what that higher power is. It's beyond my knowing, and I'm not supposed to know. I think at least I hope that, the understanding of something greater is sufficient, when it's my time to go, kind of thing. But when I was going through my injury and I felt really alone, it's interesting that you say Buddhism. I found myself going to a Buddhist monastery, and I was doing walking meditation, right? When I was in so much pain, physically and mentally and just everything, I would walk to meditate. And like, it hurt to be on my foot, but I would just, walking and just trying to find peace in every breath and in the step, right? And like trying to take power away from the pain and just finding eternity in each breath. For me, it was incredibly relaxing. And then after we did the walking meditation, we would do a sitting meditation, just focus on breathing techniques. And like, that's what really got me into meditating, which has just spiraled into this place that I'm at now with, I have different modalities and therapy that I do, but ultimately, for me, like everything starts in the mind, right? So like, I'm really, really big on mindset. So I focus on, my inner dialogue and all of that. But just a little bit of a tangent there. But
well, I think that's really cool, and I think that's a unifying. Like, I think that fits within the framework. I'm like, yeah, that's the higher power. Yeah, that's God. Like for me, I'm like, and a lot of people don't want to use the G word. I'm totally okay with however you want to use it, like, or however you say it, or even if you're a scientist. And I'm like, I believe that the universe exists forever. That's all fine for me. I don't think like, who the heck am I to judge? So if my opinion, I would say 99.999% of what I say is probably wrong. But that doesn't mean I'm not going to keep trying.
What I will say to that is, I think that, John, more often than not, you were incredibly humble. Those awards and, being called up on stage that you were sharing, I'm sure was incredibly earned and very, very well deserved. John, and knowing him for the time that I have, being very humble with his level of intelligence, and what he's been able to build, with his businesses. So I would definitely pay attention to what it is that he says and how he says it. I'm sure he will go off on many very deep and intellectual tangents that I cannot keep up with by any means. I will try to in my way. But yeah, John, we're doing this podcast together because I feel like we both have the same message, different mechanisms of trauma and maybe different interpretations or like, ways that we're able to give them to try and reach as wide of an audience as we can.
I love it. I think that's a perfect segue to sort of first episode, and then figure out how we're going to distribute and all these types of things, and then add intros and all these kind of things. But David, great first stream, and let's see where this journey takes us.
Absolutely, man. Well, I appreciate you very much.
All right, brother.